Aaron Rodgers meeting with the Steelers this weekend. The quarterback picture becoming a little bit more clear, but someone's going to be left without at the top of the draft, most likely. And let's talk tight ends. Tight end NFL draft rankings for 2025 on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Appreciate the everydayers. The thumbs up if you're with us on YouTube to let us know you stopped in. And if you're new to the program, welcome. Hang out with us every day. Break down the NFL draft, free agency trades, everything going on in the league into the season and beyond. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And yeah, it's okay. Pause it right now. Make sure you're subscribed up so you can hang out with us and go along for this ride and this journey that is always entertaining. And I think the next bit of information is going to be a little bit more quarterback movement before the draft. And Aaron Rodgers doing things in his own way, taking his sweet time, probably to the chagrin of some decision makers and certainly some fans, because I have a feeling, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, this is my feeling from over here. And look, I'm far away from Pittsburgh. I'm way over here on the West Coast. I got a feeling that a lot of people know what's going to happen. We just got to wait for it to be announced. And potentially that's going to happen on, some TV program just to make sure everyone gets their whistle wetted in this situation with Aaron Rodgers. And it feels like let me put it this way, Matt. There's no better spot for Aaron Rodgers than the Steelers, and there's no better quarterback for the Steelers than Aaron Rodgers right now, as it sits.
That's what I feel, and I know he was here all day Friday, I think it was. It was Friday, yeah. And if you were going to retire, would you even bother making that trip? I mean, I assume that was the beginning of what's hopefully a beautiful friendship, but who knows? Mike Florio wrote today that it's a safe bet that he ends up a Steeler. And the fact that the Steelers aren't doing a lot of other things makes me kind of realize that Aaron's going to do things at Aaron's pace, but he's going to be here, so all good. You mentioned Pat McAfee is from Pittsburgh and played at WVU, which is right around the corner. And he obviously hosts a very popular show. And I guess he did it one other time where PPG Arena, like where the Pens play, he sold that out for his show. And I guess in like a week, he's due to do it again. And there's just a lot of talk that Rodgers will come out in a Steeler jersey or something. I mean, it's a WWE or something,
It's fun in that way.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, right.
The Steelers aren't the type of the organization to really want that circus necessarily. But
that brings me to some other thing, right?
I like Tomlin for Rodgers because Tomlin is a no-nonsense guy. And I just feel like that could be a good relationship and enough respect where Rodgers isn't going to walk in and try to stomp all over Mike Tomlin either.
That's my thoughts too. And that's really how the organization runs from the top. We do things our way. And I assume that was drilled into his head when he was here, that we want you to be a part of things, but don't go thinking we're going to go sign Randall Cobb all of a sudden and you're going to be able to not be here for mini camps and things like that. Like, that's the big worry around here is, frankly, my opinion is if he's motivated and he's ready to give the finger to the rest of the league, this could be kind of exciting.
It can be fun. Just chuck it up. You got some. It's not Devontae Adams. I don't know who route runner is going to be for Aaron Rodgers, but the one thing that he will be able to do, and I think he still get the ball down the field, right?
Yeah.
Give DK Metcalf and maybe the two best receivers in the NFL right now. Give him a little wink. I'm throwing it deep, so go get this thing right now. And he used to do that with Devontae Adams. Now they had multiple winks for multiple different routes, but the go route, like, it's on, and it's going to open up the middle of the field if you're playing against that team. I don't know if I love the complete package for Rodgers, at this stage in his career with the middle of the field and how that's going to look necessarily for the Steelers offense. And, maybe was it Roman Wilson, right? In year two, is he going to be for that team. Maybe he's over the middle of the guy and develops for him. You might bring in an old buddy for Aaron Rodgers at some point. But, but if you're the Steelers, it's still the best thing you've had since Ben was good.
Yeah,
right?
that's my thought. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there aren't a lot of options. This is the best one that can win. I do think it's very volatile. I think DK Metcalf's volatile. I think Pickens is volatile. I'll tell you that right now, the fan base is kind of fed up with getting in the playoffs and getting blown out and those type of things. But I also think if everything aligns, and maybe please stop me if you think I'm crazy, that this could be the best version of the Steelers we've seen in a while. I mean, Metcalf and Rodgers is an upgrade, and the defense should remain intact. And I assume the running game, they ran to so many loaded boxes last year. Just the Metcalf Pickens presence should back some safeties out of and just be a little bit better on the ground. I'm not saying they're better than the Chiefs or Bills, but I think they're better than last year's Steelers with Rodgers.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the Steelers, and it's like you're pretty nonchalant as an organization right now at quarterback, and maybe you know something about Rodgers at least, but even still, he's a 40-year-old quarterback, and that's not a long-term relationship. That's just a quick fling, if anything, and that could still be disastrous. Like it could go bad.
It could be horrible.
We're painting the bright side there for a minute, but it could also go bad for the Steelers. But it's a pretty nonchalant organization right now for a team that literally hasn't added a good quarterback in 20 years.
No, I mean, they haven't added a good one forever, and they haven't really had one. And this will be
one for a while, but it was 2006 draft, right, with Roethlisberger.
I think I should know that off the top of my head, but it's Eli Rivers, Ben. Yeah, and really the last year or so, Ben wasn't good. I mean, it's been 5 years since you've had average quarterback play, at least. And BP, this will be the 5th year in a row, because Fields is now a Jet, that they will start a different quarterback on opening day. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. It's 5 years in a row, and they still go to the playoffs every year, and people are sick of it.
Right, and you should be, because that's some Browns type stuff. If you're a Steelers fan, you're like, that's what the Browns do. That's not what the Steelers do at quarterback. And you'll probably start a new one again next year. I mean, Rodgers
probably
more than 1 year. So you got to still figure out the next quarterback, even behind Aaron Rodgers. And the fact that Justin Fields was willing to not stay with the Steelers too is like, it's not condemning, because it's not like Justin Fields is amazing, but it's also like, oh, I don't know, sure, I'll go play for the Jets. I don't care.
Right.
Like, it should be like, oh, please, can I come back and be starter for your football team? And it didn't feel like that was the case, and it didn't feel like that they were super into doing whatever they could to bring him back either. So it's just a lot of wishy-washiness at the most important position for a stable organization. Is like, okay, if you want to stay stable, you got to figure out quarterback.
100%. And it's a little mind-boggling. I mean, I do think Fields was definitely priority number one, but I think they weren't married to him and didn't cry when he left necessarily. I mean, like, there's still work to be done there, but I do think that's the way they would have liked to have gone, which would be a much different offense. I don't even know if they'd make the Metcalf trade, and who knows? I have no idea. Probably would have. But you're right. This could go really wrong. Like, if he's on McAfee every week talking about what a joke the Steelers are and, blah, 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 and has 1 foot out the door and is thinking about hosting Jeopardy, and him and Arthur Smith see offense very differently, which that even just schematically worries me a little bit, because one of those two is going to have to bend dramatically, Rodgers or Arthur Smith. I'm not even talking about like run pass ratio. I'm just talking about schemes and the way Rodgers has done things,
And he wasn't moving around well. So, he's got to get good protection. And you would think that a year after, with those injuries, those Achilles injuries, it's usually a little bit better. But he's also 40 years old too. So he could be just straight washed. And that's that also. Even if the psychology is correct, he just might not be that good anymore. He might not be
That's a possibility. Right. I mean, again, if the stars align, I'm like, wow, this could be win playoff games for the first time in a while. If not, it could be a disaster. Mason Rudolph's in there in week 7, and you're just holding down the fort, and they still win 10 games and end up 20th and don't get a first round pick or whatever. So I did do a deep dive on Rodgers, and if you look at just his first 10 games, they're really bad. I mean, it's coming off Achilles. Adams hadn't really gotten his groove on yet. He looked old. His accuracy was poor. Protection wasn't great. But really the last month and a half or so, nobody was paying attention, but him and Adams and Wilson were tearing people up pretty good. That being said, what worries me a lot, and this is end of career Ben and end of career many guys, he doesn't like getting hit anymore. I mean, like the ball's coming out. I mean, I'm not standing in there in the face. And
and that second reaction stuff, running around making plays, he wasn't moving at all. And
that's
again, maybe I wasn't paying attention, and that got better at the end of the year. But it's like
a little bit, yeah.
You look great.
But he's not going to stand there and seven-step drop back, get hit in the teeth, and let it fly. No way.
Yeah, and it wasn't an arm thing. Arm's fine. It might not be quite what it was.
He could throw it, yeah.
Fine. It was the legs, and is he there upstairs too? So
yeah,
that's the important thing to look for with Aaron Rodgers. If he indeed does sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and as the quarterback carousel spins, that still leaves the team trying to figure out what they're going to do, especially if the Cleveland Browns, really, are they going to go with Shedeur Sanders? Let's talk a little bit about the top of the draft, and then we got to get into the tight end rankings for the 2025 NFL draft, courtesy of Mr. Matt Williamson. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and you wonder, where'd all that money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? For me, it's like, I'm going to get coffee every day. Sometimes I don't brew myself a pot, so I'm out and I go get myself a coffee, and I don't really think too much about it. And you realize, that's like not getting any cheaper either. It's like $6 a day, and now it's like $7 a day. What's going on there? Monarch Money, that's where it comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And how about this? Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever with Monarch Money. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress, which is very important. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel as well. And it's March Madness time. It's tourney time. Having a lot of fun, I'm sure, with your brackets. And even if your bracket is busted, FanDuel is here to give you the chance to get in on all of the action like never before this March, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and who's cutting down the nets. If you got your eye on a few underdogs, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props, live in-game betting, and so much more. And of course, tons of NFL draft props, which is still my favorite way to play. Major League Baseball, we're getting going too, which is my favorite. And you can bet on that all summer long, every single day. So all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. So where are you at the top of the draft really quick? Because you still got 3 teams and probably 2 quarterbacks. Kuiper's sneaking. Over here trying to sneak Jackson Dart not only past the Steelers at 21, but into the top 10 of the NFL draft. So, could we all of a sudden have a 1, 2, 3 quarterback situation? What do the Giants do? At some point, the Giants might have to say to themselves, man, we can't even wait for Shedeur Sanders, who would like him to fall to 3, because it's really feeling like Shedeur at 2 is a real possibility. And normally you would be doing jumping jacks because you're like, cool, I get the best player in the draft then at 3. But you need a quarterback, and you're on the hot seat. Your owner said it. And so you're not Rodgers, unless there's a change of heart. Who knows? Maybe by the time people listen to this, Rodgers didn't end up going to the Steelers. He's actually going to the New York Giants, because he left that. The old thing is usually you let the free agent come in and you don't let him leave town until you got a contract. And nothing has been announced yet in Pittsburgh. Maybe Rodgers still ends up with the New York Giants, but the Giants have to be motivated to do something right now. Otherwise, it's Jameis Winston. And what's the other option? Russell Wilson? What do you do the Giants right now at 3?
So I don't know if you agree, but when they signed Winston, I kind of thought the Rodgers door must be closed, because that's not the same as signing Mason Rudolph.
That's the we're going to draft the guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Steelers signed Rudolph and then they signed Rodgers. I don't know that you'd sign both if you're the Giants. Maybe you'd sign Wilson with Winston, and Wilson's really the guy on the outside looking into me, because it seems like his only option is if Rodgers retires and Wilson goes back to the Steelers. I mean, or does he go hold down the fort for Ward in Tennessee when it's all said and done? Or, Is he the Minnesota backup or something weird like that?
It feels like a post-draft situation. And actually, speaking of that, there's still a quarterback that could be out there in one of these scenarios. And I want to find the report here. I believe it was from Florio that I saw.
Cousins?
On Cousins, yeah.
I just saw that,
yeah. After his 2024 experiences, Kirk Cousins reportedly will wait until after the draft to decide whether to waive his no trade clause. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to sign with the team. And then they draft the quarterback, at the top. But I don't know if there's going to be another option either. Like, where else are you going to so it's basically, okay. It's basically Browns, Giants don't draft a quarterback. And you have to wait till after the draft to find out. Maybe that's what Kirk Cousins is hoping, and he's going to get that starting job.
And back to the original conversation, I do believe Sanders ends up either the second or third pick. I mean, does that mean you wouldn't have a veteran as well? I don't know. I definitely think in your Giants situation, I can't imagine the top 3 picks are quarterbacks, but maybe that's just what the league's going to be every year from now on, no matter if they're good or not.
No chance.
Maybe,
I mean,
I can't imagine.
And Shador goes 2, and Cam Ward, we're presuming, is going to go 1 to the Tennessee Titans right now. It seems more and more likely. And you don't trade up, then
you're trading back into the first round.
Just draft. Who's there in the second round? Who's there in the third round? Kirk.
Yeah.
You don't pass on. You don't pass on Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter in that situation. I just can't see them doing that to draft Jackson Dart. That just does not add up at all to me. And I want to shout out our guy, Marcus Mosher, who really does a good job tracking the expert consensus big boards for the NFL draft. And if you want to talk about a shocker, and so last year there was a shocker of a quarterback going high when people were kind of split on Bo Nix, right? And he ended up going number 12 overall. Well, he was still close to the first round as far as grades. His consensus grade before the draft was 35, 36 overall player. And he ended up going number.
Wasn't 12. That crazy,
right? And right now, it's a full round later where Jackson Dart is. So he would go from the 60s, 65 overall ranking all the way into the top 10 and go even higher than Bo Nix went. That one starts to get very difficult to believe. And we're not that late in the process yet, but we're still in March. We're in pro day season. We've got a pretty good idea of how to feel about these things.
I think it's 30 days till the draft or something. I mean, it's soon.
Right. No chance Jackson Dart goes that high. I mean, first of all, I don't see it on the tape.
I could see the Giants trading back into the first round from 35 to 20.
Right.
I could buy. But in the meantime, they got Winston. They could fall back on Cousins. I don't know what to think about Wilson. Are the Browns done with Pickett and Sanders? Maybe. I mean, they know they can get Sanders.
Yeah, I think that's it. If I had to guess, and good, it's a month, so some things can change. You might get some more new information. Rodgers to Steelers, Ward to the Titans at 1, Sanders to the Browns 2, Cousins to the Giants,
or Darts, or right. I mean, Giants are the ones. I think Wilson might be more attractive than Cousins.
I mean,
I don't know. Maybe not. I don't think so.
The more important dart for the Giants right now is throwing darts, basically, at quarterback. So Winston, Cousins, and a draft pick that's not at number 3, basically. You hope something comes up and you're like, okay, and it'd probably be Cousins 1, another veteran 2 in Winston that's there, and then you hope that Shuck is good, that you draft at 35 or whatever.
Back to the Cousins thing, maybe the Giants are, okay, we're not taking Dart at 3. We're not getting Sanders at 3. If we can't trade back to get Dart, we're calling Cousins as soon as the draft ends and he can waive his trade contract.
Even a trade back, it's you don't trade out of the blue chip if you're the Giants.
Right, no. You pick a player at 3.
You pick a player at 3 that fell to you that you should be excited about, and then you come up for Dart, if anything, or just stand pat and be like, well, I don't care. I'll draft freaking Riley Leonard or whatever in the 4th.
Yeah.
You can't get too crazy because and at some point, that's why you don't let a GM and head coach go into the draft seat, go into the new league year on the hot seat.
Right. I mean, this is bad from the start.
If they're drafting Dart or even trading out of a blue chipper to draft Dart later in the first round, you're hurting your organization, and you can't let a regime start that way.
Yep.
It's just unfortunate.
And Wilson might just do nothing. I don't know. He's going to end up in some weird situation, but I don't think he's very desirable.
So Wilson and Cousins are post-draft signings.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel right now. That's got to be that way. Yeah. So, all right, we got to figure it out. We don't even need to wait for the draft now. We know what's happening with all the quarterbacks. What's happening with the tight ends, though? Matt Williamson's tight end rankings for the 2025 NFL draft. Next. All right, Matt, let's start at the top. And by the way, folks can go to Steelers.com, right, and find these have
been up for a while.
Explanations about your top fives and honorable mentions and all of that. And it's a pretty good tight end class. We've had a lot of good tight end classes. And I think it's one of the things that's pumping up value for safeties and especially linebackers in the NFL, because it seems like we always have better tight end classes than linebacker classes, right?
100%.
Another one again this year. And so the league is just getting better at pass catchers and finding fewer and fewer guys that can cover them on offense. So let's start with your top tight end. And everyone's top two guys are the same. Mostly they're in the same order. How do you see it at the top?
Yeah, I do see it going Warren and Loveland. And I think they're two of the top 15 prospects in this draft. I think that Loveland as tight end 2 could go higher than people think. I mean, maybe that's the team. Maybe the Colts get him after Warren goes in the top 10. I think Warren will send Brock Bowers a fruit basket when it's all said and done. Thank you, that I got drafted as high as I did and what I think is a weak blue chip draft. But I don't adore him. I mean, I think Bowers is clearly a better prospect. He's not much of a blocker. He's not as twitchy as Bowers. And I understand that's a really high bar. Doesn't mean he's a bad prospect, but I don't think he's a special prospect. I mean, Bowers would be clearly ahead of these guys. Loveland might be the better receiver of the two.
Yeah, Loveland's probably the better receiver. I do like Tyler Warren quite a bit more.
Yeah.
I like the complete package there, but he's not a Bowers, Travis Kelce, third down, route you up player.
Exactly. The way he wins is a little weird.
And you go watch him play, and a lot of his touches were manufactured.
Exactly.
And there's another tight end. I don't know if he makes your top 5 here because he's kind of a hybrid move tight end player in Harold Fannin. But similar to him, you watch both these guys and you think, okay, these two tight ends, they're like combined for 3,000 receiving yards last year or something crazy. And you're like, oh, these guys must be amazing route runners. And neither one of them is.
No, Fannin I really have worries about. And part of it's a small school thing, but he was productive against the other games. But it's all manufactured touches because they get nothing else. I mean, Fannin is not very athletic. He's not very snappy in his routes,
No, he has no hips.
No, right.
For an undersized move tight end that's 6'3", 240, he has no hips.
Exactly.
But he's got some burst to him. I like the way he plays, but they got the ball to him in every way possible. But it's not like, oh, you're going to route somebody up on 3rd and 8, and we're going to throw it to you. And so those are the reservations I have for both Warren and Harold Fannin, but they both went crazy. And there's a lot to like on both of their tapes. But both guys, I was surprised watching them because they didn't win in the way I expected to see. Oh, top tight end of the draft is going to win. And I
don't know if that translates very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk. That's why I like Warren. He's my number 1 tight end. But
me too.
And I'm actually a little bit lower on Warren and Colston Loveland than a lot of people. People are putting him in the top. I would never draft Warren in the top 10. No chance.
I don't think I would either.
I think he's a first-round guy, and I think Colston Loveland's kind of a first, second guy. But a lot of people are like, oh, top. I see a lot of Warren at pick 9 to the Saints, and I see a lot of Colston Loveland in the top 15, and it's like, yeah, that's too much for me. And Brock Bowers, again, fruit basket. You nailed it.
Right.
Before Bowers last year, remember the talk was, and it still should be, top tight ends bust a lot.
I mean, like Kyle Pitts is really just a big receiver that's not fast for a big receiver, so no one thinks he's a tight end or treats him that way. So
and I think there's some of that in Loveland too. Like, what are you getting in Loveland, right? Is he that dynamic of a receiver? I don't know if I see that. He's big, so and he's not going to be like an amazing inline blocker. Sometimes he's kind of plays bully when he gets a DB in front of him when he's running the ball, but I see him in pass protection get pushed back by defensive ends. So I've got reservations on both those guys. I think I'm a little bit lower, even though they should be tied in 1 and 2. I'm just looking at them way later in round 1 or even early round 2 than talking about them as top 15 guys. That's me personally.
Do you agree that Loveland's receiving skills and profile translate the NFL better than Warren's? I'm not saying he's a better prospect, but I think he's a better route runner. He's more of a technician as a route runner.
I would
better
say
hips.
Still, I don't think it's still though so amazing that I would take him over. Warren. And I like the way Warren plays with his physicality, and I think there is some twitchiness to Warren. It's just not so much as a route runner, and it depends on the team.
Yes,
I would want Warren to go to a Shanahan offense. Well, they'll find ways to get somebody like that the football. So I like Fannin and Warren and offenses like that. If you just want your straight up wide tight end that gets open on third down, maybe it's not the greatest fit for you for either of those guys, really.
No, I'm with you. Overall, I agree, though. This is a very good class. I mean, I think there's 8 to 10 that could be contributors.
So let's get into that. You're in round 2, 3, 4. You didn't get one of the top few guys. Well, what's the rest of your list look like after Warren and Loveland at the top?
I always hate saying guys are safe prospects, but I think Mason Taylor, Jason Taylor's son from LSU, is going to be a really good, the 12th best tight end in the league to the 16th best. The starter, solid, really natural. I think he's a very good prospect.
He's interesting to me because he's kind of out of, I would put probably Elijah Arroyo and Mason Taylor in that, like, and in fact, I'm looking at their combine numbers right now, nearly identical.
They're both, Arroyo's my next guy, by the way. Yeah.
They're 6'5", 250, big hands, long arms, athletic. Neither ran at the, did Mason Taylor run? Yeah, no, neither ran at the combine, so I don't know what the 40 times are, but they're just like big athletic guys. Like, okay, what do you want in your tight end?
Real smooth.
I want him to be big and athletic and 6'5", 250, and can move around the field well, can catch the football, can block a little bit. I'm like, cool. Well, good. We got good news for you. Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo, you don't have to take them in the first round, but they've got all those traits.
100%. Down the seam, pluck the ball away from them. They can body up smaller guys as well. Taylor's the better blocker. He's a little more well-rounded. Arroyo's probably faster and straight line. But they'll play at the next level. You know what I mean? Like someone will be happy they took them at the end of round 2 or something. Yeah,
they're both guys that you're like, yeah, I'm going to draft him on my I'm going to pick him up on my hoops, my pickup hoops squad too. Type of a play. So
good at everything. Yeah.
And so I like both those guys in the round 3. That's why I'm kind of waiting on tight end. I'm not going to fall all over myself to draft Warren or Loveland in the first round. I'm going to wait, and even if I don't get Arroyo or Mason Taylor, you can still wait. And there's plenty of other good guys. I mentioned Harold Fannin. Is Fannin in your top 5, or is he too weird for you?
Too weird. And there was a handful of others. I considered Fannin. I thought about Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame as a guy I like quite a bit. Gunnar Helm just really was terrible at the combine, and I don't think he's as good as people think he is. One dude I do want to mention who didn't make my top 5 that I kind of got been exposed to more lately is Georgia's Ben Urasek. He's a transfer from Stanford. He was a highly recruited kid. He's really athletic and just kind of got buried at Georgia a little bit this past year. But I went with Terrence Ferguson, who I think is clearly a distant 5. Those top 4 are probably in everyone's top 4. Really good combine, a little bit lean, but long catching radius. Not much of a blocker. He can get thrown around for sure, but real productive at Oregon too.
Yeah, and he did himself a lot of favors at the combine too.
Yeah,
he kind of checked boxes for teams. Are like, how big is he? How athletic is he? Well, he's 6'5", 250. He's actually just an eighth of an inch taller than both Arroyo and Mason Taylor. 247 pounds, which is a good weight for him to show up and run 4.63. And so he threw down 1.55, 10 yards.
Tester there, yeah,
fastest of all the tight ends, not only with the 40, but the 10-yard split as well. 10-2 broad jump. I do want to highlight one thing. So I talked about Harold Fannin, like he can't turn. And he's got no hips. He runs so straight-legged, but he also ran by far the best 3-cone time at 6.97, which is your ability to like move and corner. Usually it's a really big one for pass rushers to show you can get around the corner.
It's definitely a tight end drill though too.
Harold Fannin's the weirdest prospect I've ever seen. And I mean, the dude, he had 120 catches for 1,500 yards, right? Like the entire offense, but it was Bowling Green. So you don't have a lot of other guys. I kind of like Harold Fannin, but he's weird. And like,
he is weird.
I couldn't touch him until probably, pick 75, 100. And, if he's there in the 4th round, then now we're really talking.
I brushed him off and I didn't put him in my top 5 when we brought him up, but it wouldn't shock me if he's fantasy relevant one day. You know what I mean? Like if someone's using him properly, gets in the right scheme. I just, as a generic top 5 ranking, he's not for me. Maybe on a specific team I could see it.
There we go. Who's your favorite tight end? You got a favorite sleeper? Let us know at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Get your questions in for this week's mailbag episode. And of course, wherever you are, please subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. And how about for your second listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network? Check out any of the 200 podcasts, including Locked On NFL, breaking down the league every single day. And you can find Matt. You can double dip if you want with me or Matt. I'm doing Locked On 49ers. You don't want to hear about 49ers. That's okay. How about Locked On Dynasty and on Wednesdays, Locked On NFL on Fridays, featuring Matt Williamson as well. So we got you covered here on the network. Talk to you next time right here, Peacock and Williamson.